Hello, this is Dr. Paz and welcome to our class and to week 5. So I am in our course and I am going to our modules and getting to our week 5, and we're going to go over some of this information for you today. Keep in mind that this video will be posted here in the week 5 virtual classroom task. And basically throughout the video, I will be giving you discussion prompts to answer. So all you have to do is click here and then you'll see the video. I'll insert it here and then you're going to submit your assignment here directly. So once I put this in there, you'll just put in your text box or a file how you're going to answer the questions that arise throughout this video. Great. So hopefully that is clear. And obviously the video will be inserted here, and I'll also put the same thing in the video, like up here in the virtual classroom task, to please watch the video and go through the assignments that I tell you through, or the questions that are asked in the video. Okay, so this week we are looking at chapter 7, which is indirect methods. And then I am going to download our PowerPoint because that is going to definitely be one of the ways in which we will discuss the chapter. So I'll download that for a moment now, and we'll come back to that because I want to review all of the information here. So in our week 5 discussion, which several of you have already participated in, you are required to make at least 3 substantive posts in the discussion. So that would be 1 initial response post, basically answering the discussion prompt question, and then 2 other posts that are due by Sunday. And those could be basically, responding to your classmates or adding if you found another article, however you want to do that. But the expectation is that you're going to not merely just agree with the response, but add to it, right? So basically what you're doing in here is you can include your personal experience in your responses, and you can explain how and why one might combine qualitative and quantitative approaches in the same study. Include an example. So keep in mind that your qualitative information is information that isn't numbers, right? So in this case, typically when we're conducting research or trying to come up with empirical evidence, we are looking here possibly for themes, possibly coding. We might get interviews, we might use images, we might use information from the web that isn't quantitative or numbers driven. So that's some types of qualitative information. And then quantitative approaches are completely the opposite. Those are numbers. So typically in research, we have what's known as WRDS, Wharton's Research Data Services. And that's through the University of Pennsylvania, the Wharton School of Business. And they actually provide access for a hefty price. Unfortunately, it's very expensive to get this data, but they do provide information from companies, right? So they have separate databases. CompuStat is one. CRISP gives us databases that it's a database that provides stock information. CompuStat gives us financial data. ExecuComp gives us information on executives' compensation, especially the CEO's compensation. So one of your first prompts for this video is to name a few of the databases that are available out there that you can gather either qualitative or quantitative data. So basically you could mention Wharton's Research Data Services, CRISP or CompuStat. You can mention ExecuComp. You can mention the SEC, the Securities and Exchange Commission, has EDGAR. And if we Sorry about that. Every time I use this Screencast-O-Matic or Canvas Studio, when I want to do something else, it seems to just stop recording, and then it takes me a few seconds to notice that. So I don't know. I'll have to figure that out, but I wanted to make sure I got this to you. So anyhow, SEC EDGAR is definitely another way in which database that you can do that. Any type of information that you can hand collect, like I know there's corporate social responsibility reports, things of that nature that you can also find as well. So it's just, you can pick any type of data source and just put that either in a Word document or you can type it directly into the virtual classroom. So let's go back to our week 5 and look at our assignments. So we have an application assignment, social aspects of posted comments in an e-article. So here you're going to review the section in the chapter on your content analysis and on virtual traces. And so that is indirect data. And then you're going to read this article, Instagrammers are sucking the life and soul out of travel. And then you're going to answer these questions. So after you read this article, you're going to state a topic and a one-sentence statement that you expect about your expected findings. And if you use a quantitative approach, you are going to state a testable hypothesis. Keep in mind that your hypothesis is either your null and your alternative hypothesis. And we typically want to prove the alternative hypothesis. And then you also want to be sure to specify a comparison group, another form of communication about the article other than the comments posted online. And so this would be helpful if we look at our textbook, these two exhibits and figures in our textbook, because it shows us these qualitative and quantitative approaches. So you're going to read some of the sample of the comments about the article, and then you're just going to summarize your findings in a one-sentence statement comparing your findings to what you expected to find. So basically what you did in question 1 is you're telling me what you expected to find, and then in question 2, you're going to actually just write a sentence comparing, did you truly find what you expected, or was there a surprise, which typically in research there can be. And then you are going to summarize what you think are the strong points of the study, and then the weaknesses of the study or limitations. So for example, the comments that you read, sometimes limitations are you're only looking at one particular group, or you're only looking at students in a classroom, or students, or clinical tests. And so there's always limitations in a study, but there's also, advantages that you can try to get some generalizations or draw some correlations. Keep in mind that correlations are not causation, right? A correlation just shows you if two items are related, but they don't show you if one causes the other. And then your last few steps here are to describe the most difficult part of the application and explain how you overcame that difficulty. So let me see if we put this, and hopefully it won't stop. Let me see here. Of course. All right. It still looks like it's recording, and see if it'll let me put this in here. And it's still recording. So hopefully you see the articles here in The Guardian, in the Irish Times, in the Gulf News, in Facebook. So let's open up a few of these and see what we get. All right, let's see here. And so hopefully this is about a 3-year-old article, but then you can go through it and you can see, and then you can find, so any source, and then I would say you want to add the source wherever you get it from in your submission for our assignment. Okay, so the second prompt for this virtual classroom video is to let me know in your comments how and why you chose the article that you did. Because when you see here, when I have I Googled just the name of the article by the author here, Rihanna Lucy Colsett, then you see that there's several that come up, as you can see on Facebook, on Twitter, on Course Hero. They're just all over the place. So hopefully you will pick one that you find that would actually make you feel that you can complete the assignment. And then for this virtual assignment, you are going to add into your either text submission or your Word document that you submit the why you chose the article that you did. So if you chose this, like I did, I liked theguardian.com, then I chose it because it was the first one. So, and they're all about the same dates, right? The 17th or the 19th. This is a little bit later. But you could see that. So hopefully that helps you kind of do your application assignment here. And then let's see our next assignment. All right, so now, we're doing an annotated bibliography. Oh, well, these are one of my favorites. So regardless of the research method that you decide to pursue, the literature review portion of a research project is key. This means that you have to review the current literature and research in the field to ensure that you understand how your topic, which you selected in week 3, is explored within other studies. So for this assignment, you will research databases in the CAU Virtual Library to find an academic journal article or book entry on the topic of your research. And so the journal article or book is the source you will use to complete this assignment. So once you have made your selection, you review this sample of an annotated bibliography and write the following information about the source. So here you're going to list your reference in APA style at the top of your paper. You're going to describe the content of your source. And here what we're looking for is how it relates to your study. So for example, I am teaching a PhD class and they're doing annotated bibliographies. And let me see if I can go to that so you can see some sources there. So let me see here. And so under my website, which is drvpaz.com, I am teaching a seminar in financial accounting. These are my PhD courses that I teach in this, but just so you can see an annotated bibliography here. And if you click here under introduction, this lesson, there is an annotated bibliography there that you can look at. So the third portion of your virtual assignment here for this particular rest of our session here is to look at this introductory lesson and the annotated bibliography, which I will show you. So this is, you'll see a bunch of information here, sources, but this is where you want to go, right down here to the annotated bibliography. So if you just click on that, it should take you directly there. And here what you see is I have 3 different sources here that how to write an annotated bibliography and bibliography.com, which lets you do it exactly on the site. So if you click access site here, you'll see you can pick your APA format and then you can start your bibliography. So this is probably a really good tool to help you create your assignment here. So again, for this video, you're going to state which of the 3 sites here, or if you found another one, that's even more fabulous. So if you found another site through your search that can help you create an annotated bibliography for one source, then you would put that in as part of your virtual classroom assignment. So let's go back here and let me see if I can get into our library to show you a few pieces of information here. So let's see by subject if we have any information here. All right, and let's see. So we have library guides, and let's click on that library guide and see what we come up with. Let's go to databases. Here we go. So typically the database is ProQuest Research Library here. That has several articles that we use in business and in research. So this might be your ProQuest Research Library. Provides a one-stop access with over 4,000 periodicals, and it's one of the broadest, most inclusive general reference databases. And so ProQuest Complete is the one that I use often, so I would recommend for this particular assignment to use this research library. That would be helpful. And let's see if there's any others. If your topic related to education, this is a ProQuest Education Journals. ERIC is the database. That is another database that I use. I tend to publish. If you go to my website, you'll see here the publications that I have. And basically you'll see all of them, and see here I use gamification in the classroom and a plant tour, and here's like more an empirical study. So you'll see all of those here. And so, but you see for these, I tend to use the ERIC database because that's a bit on more educational topics, whether it's distance learning or gamification. So if your topic relates to that, the education database, or ERIC as you see here, might be a very nice way of kind of condensing and trying to find that article so that you can do your annotated bibliography. And then let's go back into subjects to see. All right. So if we just click on, let's try business and see what we get here. And let's go to the databases. ABI Inform is also another, and accounting, tax, and banking, one of my favorites. All right, so these two, ABI Inform is definitely another database that I highly recommend. And then ABI Dateline is if you can't find certain articles. Of course, I love accounting and tax and banking, but let's go here and let's see if we can, okay, is done through the LMS. All right, let's go back and see how we can do that. All right, let's go here. Wonderful, and see if it likes us. All right, well, it's not working for me, but hopefully it's working for you. But anyhow, let's go back. Let's see. Let's go back one. So when I clicked on business, ABI, Inform, ProQuest, ERIC, or accounting, tax, and banking, these are all databases that I would recommend for you to complete your week 5, your annotated bibliography. And then let's download this sample here and show you what it looks like. So here you have a format, and here's the example. And the tools that I gave you here from my website are very similar, right? So here is your citation in APA format, and then you just describe the article a little bit. And so when you're doing the article description, what you would do is basically just show what did they study, or the research question, right? Or the research problem that they're trying to address. And how did they go about doing that? Was it, did they have a sample? Did they have an empirical experiment? Was it qualitative? Was it quantitative? What did they do? So typically you can get this information from like the first couple of pages of an article, then because there's usually, at least in business articles and in accounting articles, like right here where you see this. Let me see if it lets me into this one. Oh, good. That one's a little bit better. And so I can log in. Perfect. Let me see. Will it let me? Not yet. Okay. Well, when you click on, let's go back one here. When you click on the databases, the accounting, tax, and banking, if you choose an accounting topic or a finance topic, then typically accounting journals, you'll see the first 2 pages is a whole summary of the article. Then it'll start with like an introduction, a literature review, and typically the literature reviews end with a hypothesis. And then the next section is the methodology, how they're going to test that hypothesis. And then they give a discussion and the findings. And typically the last section is the conclusions. And that's where future research is given and limitations of the study are also given. And future research is where a lot of scholars pick up off of, right? So when you see a study that's published, then they might, everybody can't test everything. So they might say it would be best if we did this with a different set of subjects or expanded our sample size because we were only able to interview 15 people and we should, possibly interview across, let's say, junior, sophomore, seniors, etc. So there's a lot of ways that we can do that. So hopefully you have a bit of an idea here. So this is exactly what you're doing. And so your assignment would submit from here onward and just the article that you chose and what made you choose that. And then also make sure that for this virtual assignment, you pick one of these sites that could possibly have helped you. Or if you found another site, then absolutely choose that. Perfect. So I think we've covered, let's go back into the modules, all of the assignments here for our week. So there's so far been 3 prompts within this discussion or this video that you're going to place here. And then we've gone over your annotated bibliography, which goes back, like we said, from week 3, where you had your topic selection. So I know several of you have had some very interesting topics. So just make sure that whatever topic you selected, that you're looking at the database through the LIRN library that you're looking for in the databases that mostly relates to your topic. All right, so then our last order of business here is let me get our PowerPoint and try to go over that briefly for the remainder of our time together. Let's open that in a minute here. Let's make this guy a bit bigger. I'm afraid to put it in slideshow mode because of Screencast-O-Matic and where, Studio, where it's all going. So physical evidence on a mobile phone. So this chapter, as we know, discusses the indirect methods to produce data because they're not available from other sources. These methods can produce valid data through survey data. Surveys have to have what's known as content validity. And that content validity is basically that you're creating the questions in the survey for a purpose and that you're making sure that they're accurate. And so that is an indirect method, but we're hoping not to contaminate the responses or the reactions from the subjects or who we're getting the survey information from. So several indirect sources of data. We can have physical traces, right? So that could be fingerprints, if there's a broken window, if there's a burglary that happened, forced entry. Those are all ways that we would show physical traces. We can have virtual or electronic traces, which is that you have data from mobility patterns that are stored on your smartphone. So you would look at the phone's history and see what cell tower it pinged off of to see where possibly the subject was at the time. You can also have contemporary records, which are magazines, music, internet websites, and you can have archival and historical records. So that could be like gravestone encryptions, church records, things of that nature. Then we have indirect data collection methods. So there are two types here. We talked about content analysis here, which is a method that you're converting recorded communication into usable forms such as variables. So content analysis we can use with most types, if not any type of indirect data. So here what you're doing is you're trying to look at possibly the transcription of the interview and seeing what themes are in there. You're possibly going to code that transcription to see what happens. And on my website, I used this type of methodology, content analysis. Let me go back to that, in an academic integrity paper that I wrote. So let me find that for you. And that way you can see content analysis in action. And so right here. So this academic integrity in an online business communication environment, right? So I use qualitative research questions by Hofstra University as an open-ended blog questions for students so they can use their critical thinking skills to express their opinions. And so what I did here is what their blog, how they answered the blog questions, that's when I did the content analysis to see what themes emerged. And so you'll see here that the themes that emerged were honesty, trust, fairness, respect, and responsibility. So that is what I was coding all of the students' responses, and their responses is each considered a case in a qualitative study. And then I coded it to see where what came up. And I did some word frequencies. I did some data matrices. I used a program known as NVivo down here to help me code all of that and then put them all together so that I can see these patterns. And so there you would see a content analysis in itself. And then you have an unobtrusive observation, right? So this is where you're actually looking at the behaviors, but like inconspicuous, right? So you're trying to observe them, but they don't see you as the researcher observing them. So if you've like sat at a mall, right, and you're people watching, you've done a form of unobtrusive observation. And so typically in experiments, what we do is we have somebody like myself asking the questions, but then somebody else is watching the body language, the behavior, the mannerisms, listening to the tone, things of that nature, so that you can get a full spectrum of what the subject is hopefully trying to tell us. Then we have ethics and indirect methods, right? So as with any data collection procedures, especially when we have human subjects, there's ethical standards and safeguarding of participant privacy that are super important. And so we have what's known as an institutional review board, an IRB. And if you're going to use subjects, then you have to get IRB approval. So anytime I try to conduct a survey, I have to go to the IRB and get approval. And I'm working on that now because I'm doing a data analytics case and I want to apply it in the classroom to see how effective it is. So I'm working on that IRB approval. And so this point applies particularly to online snooping into your cell phone or your social media accounts or your business records, but irrelevantly applied to like very old gravestones as well. So in chapter 2, where we talked about ethics and the social science research, basically we described some ethical principles and the key ethical issues. And so here in this chapter, our appendix 2 gives us codes of ethics for various disciplines and for nations. And so it also includes some website information that might be of interest, like ethical decision making and internet research. So it might be something for you to look at. And then we have collection of physical trace data. And that is a perfect example of unobstructive measurements used typically in a social science discipline. So in the most curious case of missing silver, like we talked about in chapter 1, the police and later the forensic criminologist examined physical trace data. So there was fingerprints, there was a blood smear on the silver cabinet in the owner's mansion. And then we had observations are made after the behavior of subjects is complete. So there is no research subject contact. So because of that, we have an unobtrusive measure that seldom are attached to any single individual, but the ethical concerns here are always about the invasion of privacy because they're reduced. So interestingly, phones with a debit card touch and pay app can operate with the same type of physical evidence, like your fingerprints, or if you have an iPhone, it looks at your face to see if it can identify them, although this isn't really from a crime scene. So facial recognition is another physical trace or an example of a physical trace. And we see that typically with our iPhones, right, where it looks at your face to see if it'll open the phone for you. Awesome. So here we have an example of an unobtrusive observation where we're looking to obtain physical trace data and sneaky measurement of crime and disorder. So we have Jeanette Garwood and co-authors noted that crime hotspots aren't well identified in the United Kingdom due to the imperfect recording of details about locations, especially when it involves a vehicle crime. So recorded data often do not provide adequate information about the time, the place, and the circumstances to support any type of specific crime-fighting policies. So underreporting can distort the official record of like any type of domestic violence, hate crimes, terrorist crimes, etc. So Garwood et al., that means that she has a few authors, right, describe some unobtrusive data sources using sneaky measurements to supplement these official crime records and hopefully improve the validity of the crime information. So 2 examples that she gives are the rate of repairs to football stadium seats and bus shelters due to vandalism, and the remains of matches and burned foil in bars and public restrooms, suggesting illegal drug use or heroin smoking. And so then we have virtual electronic data, trace data, right? And this refers to evidence of traceable digital information that is stored in economic forms as a result of an individual's activities, contributions, and communications on the internet or on digital devices. So your IP address, for example, could be visible, and then it could be followed to see where you were logging in from. Your cell phone data, we could see what cell phone tower your phone pinged to, and kind of see your traces and how you move throughout, the city. So you have paid little attention, right, to how your electronic traces you and what you're leaving, but these are digital traces or footprints, and this helps investigators or helps researchers to kind of piece together, and especially investigators of crimes, to form a timeline and to try to see if there is a crime committed, when was that crime committed, and how, and try to, get work backwards. So how does Amazon, the online retailer, know how many purchases and what types of purchases you've made from them during a specific time period, just like the last 6 months? So please answer this question as well in your virtual classroom. How does Amazon, one of my favorite online retailers, know how many purchases and what types of purchases you've made from them during a specific time period, like your last 6 months? So make sure you answer this question. This is the fourth prompt that you have within this video. Okay, then we have early evidence suggests that virtual trace or electronic data can help researchers obtain a more representative sample, producing these generalizable findings about people's day-to-day behaviors or your tendencies or your patterns. So such data could provide more valid data from surveys or observations, and that way we don't have this contamination of memory limitations or socially desirable responses. So what we do is we combine data from several methods and we try to study the same phenomenon, perhaps the best approach to obtain more valid and reliable and generalizable information. So an example is looking at rates of repairs of those bus seats or those stadium seats, and then surveying the bus drivers or the stadium managers, like to try to get information of how this vandalism could have occurred, how can we prevent it in the future, things of that nature. And then content analysis is a method where we code recorded communication into some type of usable forms. So here we're looking to create variables from the communication that we found in our books, magazines, journal, newspaper articles, print media, audio, and audiovisual recordings. So we want to appear that reliable information usually can be coded through content analysis from all of these sources. It's not easy to produce reliable content analysis, right? The validity depends on the accuracy and completeness of the source. So table 7.1 shows you the steps to a qualitative study to do this content analysis using the topic cheating in love. And table 7.2 shows you the quantitative approach to the same topic. And these two tables will help you to complete your first assignment that we went over with qualitative and quantitative approaches. And then lastly, we have advantages and limitations of indirect methods, right? So we have access to information that can possibly not be available in other sources, right? So historical data can reveal over time differences possibly in deaths, and content analysis in popular media can be duplicated in surveys to see if they truly are applicable. And so no respondents' reactions that might contaminate the data. And we have this direct, unobtrusive observation that we can avoid errors from the data. So we can compare virtual traces from like the smartphone logs to interviewing phone owners and then seeing how their minutes are spent texting or communicating, for example. One limitation is that indirect data sources, they seldom contain all the information you need. So validity is always a concern, especially when we have historical data, and coverage may not be complete and sources might be limited for checking of accuracy. Perfect. So throughout this video, you've had 4 prompts, so make sure that you go back into our class here, and for this virtual classroom 5, you can put all of the questions to the prompts in one Word document, or you can just type it in the comments. And I will post this video and the assignment instructions as soon as it's available. Thanks for watching.